Hey everybody, this is Jesse P. Gilmore, agency transformation coach and founder of Niche in Control, author of The Agency Owner's Guide to Freedom, and the creator of Leverage for Growth. I'm the host of the Leverage for Growth podcast, and I know that in order for you to scale your agency successfully, there are multiple shifts that need to happen within your mindset, skill set, and leadership style. I am on a mission to interview marketing and PR agency owners on their journey to 6, 7, and 8 figures and leverage the lessons from their journey to save you time, energy, and money to get your agency to the next level. If you find value in these episodes, watch the case study video to learn more about Leverage for Growth and how we successfully scale agencies at nicheincontrol.com/case study. That is nicheincontrol.com/case study. You are now listening to Leverage for Growth. Hey everybody, this is Jesse P. Gilmore, founder of Niche in Control and the creator of Leverage for Growth. Welcome to the Agency Leverage Edition. Today I'm here with a special guest, Brian Town, the author of The Lonely CEO and the founder of the Michigan Creative, a full-service digital marketing agency and design agency on a mission to create customized brand experiences that revolutionize your industry. I'm particularly excited about this conversation because I read somewhere that you started an agency with $350 and now you're making about $2 million a year. So excited to dive into this journey over the last 13 years, hear your insights along the way. Thanks for coming to our show today, Brian.
Hey, Jesse, that was a great intro. You know, those intros, like when I do speaking events or these, like I want to just take that and then play it when I get home. So my 10-year-old daughter thinks I'm not sus. You know,
No,
like, hey, I'm actually cool and I do cool things. And no, she just thinks I just have a job. You know, it's normal for people to run companies.
Well, that's very cool. And by the way, you can listen to this episode numerous times in the car or something.
Yeah. Just keep playing it over. I should just do a collection of all my greatest hits. And she would just sit there and roll her eyes and put her headphones on or something. Anyway. But yeah, that's a great intro. That's exactly right. I mean, you know, that's how we started. And I don't ever, you know, it's funny because I don't think of it like that. Like and I think all entrepreneurs are like that. My wife's a business owner and we just start things and we don't, you know, when someone says it out loud and to think about where we've come and how we did it, like it sounds pretty good. And I think we all need to do that. Like, you know, I try to tell my coaching clients to, you know, when they get frustrated and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Or I don't know if I'm the person to do this. And I say, hey, look, just take a minute and look at what you have and look at where you've come. And if it burns down tomorrow, you've done a great job. And I think for us, you know, who are in it every day, we don't do that. I don't do that. I tell my clients to do it. Right. I'm great at giving advice, but not taking it. And so for me, you know, that's good to hear. And that's literally how we started.
Mm-hmm. One of the most beautiful things that's going to happen in the next 20 or 30 minutes, Brian, is that you're going to get that chance to actually look back on the last 13 years and pick apart both the peaks, the pits, the learnings along the way, and sharing them with an audience that is probably maybe 1 or 2 steps before you, or maybe even 10 steps before you.
Yeah.
So let's get started, and let's start at the way beginning. Before we get into the agency piece, if you can bring yourself back to that $350, making the leap, what was going on in your world that got you to the point where you're like, I'm going to start an agency?
Yeah. Pure stupidity, you know, I think was the thing. And I think, you know, I was, I think 13, 14 years of a teacher. That's all I had really done. I went to school for television production, and then I ended up getting to be a certified teacher for high school. Ended up getting a great job in a town near here called Hazlitt, and worked at Hazlitt High School. And I taught and ran the video program, and that was my job. That was basically my, I think, second job out of college. And did that and thought, well, you know, this is what I'm going to do. And it was great. I mean, it was great to teach, you know, video production was fun. And we created a nationally recognized TV program, and kids still today are not kids anymore, because I'm old. They're adults that have kids, are still in the industry. You've got, you know, and I don't know what it was. I think I was just before 40. I think it was 38, 39. I was talking to my wife and I said, you know, not having as much fun. I think I want to do something different. And she said, well, do it. And just decided on a Friday in the summer and said, hey, I don't think I'm coming back in the fall,
Mm-hmm.
and got an office space in East Lansing and an incubator. And that was when incubators, everybody knows what that means now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But back then it was kind of new. It was new for us in East Lansing,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't really had some savings, and just, I say that $350 because that was my deposit on my shared office space. And that's how we started. I made our first logo, and it's awful. Like, I have it up here on the mantle, and I remember showing it to my wife and going, I think I just grabbed an icon off the internet, and it was 3D. And I remember showing her, and she's like, oh my God, you're going to be a millionaire. And it's so bad. Like, it's really bad. But yeah, man, that's how we started. I had a computer, I had a small digital video camera.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That 350 and a really kick-ass logo, dude.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
When you first started, I'm always interested to see whether or not the services in an agency either stayed the same, was like full service in the way beginning, or was it a niche and then it kind of expanded, or, what was their services? What was your ideal client? How did you kind of start off with the agency?
Yeah. Again, I didn't know. And I really didn't know much about marketing at that point, or business. I mean, I was a teacher. That was it. But I did know video. I was a creative person, still am today, and, I decided at that point that we needed to be full service. And we still are today. Now, looking back, I wonder sometimes, I'm like, man, if I could do it all over again, would I niche, and maybe, but yeah, so I think the services are pretty much the same. We always wanted to do website. I remember hiring a former student who I found, not on the street, but we were walking down the street. I was walking down the street for lunch in East Lansing, and I saw John Crafts, and he was a former student, family friend. I know his dad real well. And he went to Michigan State, which is right across the street. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? He graduated. He was working at a clothing store, and he's like, oh man, I said, do you know how to build websites? He's like, yeah, I think so. And, so we, started doing websites and logos, and obviously, social media. Facebook was really kind of the thing back then. So we were doing a lot of that, and video obviously was a big anchor for us, just because I knew that's what I could do. That's what I could bring to the table. And so, yeah, today we're doing the same thing. The thing that stayed the same besides that, I mean, our services maybe are a little different, but, I really, after that first couple months, I had this moment where I was like, because at first it was like, oh my gosh, look at my office, and it was beautiful, and I'm like, I'm a business owner. And then a couple months later, I was like, oh man, like, what did I do? I quit my paying job, and I remember calling my sister going, what did I do? And she's like, well, hey, listen, man, like, if it's not going as well as you want, you can always go back to teaching or go get a job, or just keep trying things. And so, listen to that advice of my much older and wiser sister. I always like saying much older, but did that, and really started to focus on who I wanted to be as a person, and who I wanted our company to be.
Mm-hmm.
And focused on culture and core values and those kind of things. And those are still around 13 years later.
Mm-hmm. One of the most interesting things that I find is a commonality between podcast guests that have made it into the 7 or even 8, or one of our guests was a 9-figure agency, is the focus on both the development of self at the same time as the development of culture.
Yep.
That's a very distinct difference between the different groups that I interview. And I think one of the great things that you just described was that you were focusing on who you're becoming, or who you want to become, and that sense of becoming. Can you talk a little bit about, did you learn that somewhere? Was that something that you learned over experience, that whole idea of like kind of crafting who you are?
Yeah, I mean, that's you get, kind of give me chills a little bit thinking about that, because I think that's something that we're always doing as humans. But then if you want to be tested as a human, start a business. And you'll really start to figure out, is you need to figure out how you're going to run yourself, and who you're going to be, and what you stand for, because it is very, very difficult. And I think, I've done that several times, and more recently too, because now I'm starting to go, okay, 13 years, 14 years, now what? Now how do I evolve again? Because, we went from just me to me and a half person to me and a couple half people to, we were up to 20, 22 at one point. Now we're back down to 14 or 15 and bigger clients. And so, I think what really got me, and I love telling this story, is because it's still with us today, is that when I was sitting there after that conversation with my sister, I was like, all right, I know we can do the creative work. I got to figure out what it means to be a Michigan creative, and what I need to be. That inspirational teacher piece of me was still there. I pass out cheesy quotes to my students all the time, and I still do it today. I do it with my adult. I still teach some with my in adults. I teach adults, and then also with my staff. And I was doing some research online what it means to run a good company, and ran across a company at the time was called Centro. They've then changed their name, and they're a large media buying agency still based out of Chicago, and they were big then. And I ran across his manifesto, and it was everything that I wanted. It talked about how we were supposed to be as leaders, how we were supposed to be as employees, and it didn't talk about the stuff we were making. It talked about how we wanted to behave inside and outside of work. Behave's a bad word because it sounds elementary, right? But we felt that we could hire the creative pieces, no problem, but we really wanted great people, and we felt that. And I wanted to be an inspiration to people where I could improve their lives, either by working with us for a long time or by learning great things and getting great jobs. And so when I ran across that, I wanted to steal it, but I emailed them and asked if I could steal it. Artists steal like an artist is a great book. Right. And, I did. I got a hold of whoever was manning the email at the front desk or whatever. And she, I asked, and she said, absolutely. Our CEO, Sean, wants everybody to use this. And I said, great. Is there any way I can talk to him? And sure enough, I got to speak to him, and he kind of said, hey man, I know it's hard, but keep telling people what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you want Michigan creative. We got our first brand messaging out because of that, where we felt that if we were going to improve the online presence of companies, that would help our state, right? Because then that would grow. And from there, we created our own manifesto that was very similar, and created our core values, which we still have today. And so that kind of moment was that moment where I was like, I think I'm going to keep going. And it's just cool because, seeing that it's still a piece of us today, and I still love telling that story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the most amazing things, I have an opportunity pretty much every time that I have a podcast guest, not only to get to understand the journey, get to understand the trends, get to understand kind of where you came from and where you are and where you're going. And one of the cool things is that you're talking about the strengthening or the calling of a stronger vision that pulls people that are usually individuals and building a business for them to eventually looking outside of themselves and making a bigger impact. And that's just beautiful, dude.
Yeah. And I think our manifesto and our core values helped us attract some of the talent that we have, who a lot of them aren't here anymore. Right. I mean, we're a small business, people come and go in great ways. But they would read that and they're like, I want a piece of that. Like, I want to, that's the type of company, that I want to be a part of. And I think that core value that really, speaks to that. I think we have 5, but the one that I really like is everyone you come in contact with should have a better day. And I thought that's what we all need, especially today, right? Like it feels like the world's crazy and we don't make an impact. And I think if we kind of shrink it down a little bit to making an impact with the people that we interact with and our families and our friends and colleagues, that they then maybe can make an impact outside of here. I that to me, if we decided to shut down tomorrow, that people are able to experience that maybe in some form or another, whether it was me or not, I don't really care. But so that's kind of what that's what I wanted. And that was great. I mean, I think that's great. And we focused a lot on that. And I think we focused a lot on culture, and we kind of got mixed up what culture was for a bit,
Yeah.
and didn't focus on the important things at first sometimes.
And it's been quite a journey. So going back to the journey itself, I mean, there's a big proponent of kind of the development of self and the strengthening of a why, and then the culture of a team, and kind of growing. And you had talked about in the way beginning, one of your first employees or partners in the journey kind of came from either walking on the street or, can you do websites? Sure. And then kind of going, and there's probably, it might be a different hiring process these days.
Yeah. I did a lot of that. I still like to do that, but they've got people in place, so I don't do that anymore.
Let's talk a little bit about that kind of comparison. So, if you were to, because 13 years is a decent amount of time, and the growth going from solo to up to 22 to 14 people, and then the switches, there's probably a lot of things that are a lot different than it was in the way beginning. And there's probably a lot of lessons that you learned along the way. Teams and hiring is probably one of them. Culture is probably another one. What are some other ones that kind of come to mind in that kind of transition?
Yeah, I think definitely hiring, like we have a process now, I think, which I never wanted to follow because I hate process. But that burned us a lot. I'm like, hey, they're a good person. I've been right a lot. Just FYI, I'm going to put that out there in the universe. If Emily or anybody else is listening, like I've been right a lot of people, but I've been wrong on a lot of people too. But I think process and sales, I think I always go back to that, where as a creative person and an entrepreneur, you don't feel that you have time for process and you hate it, because sometimes you don't. You just have to make decisions if they're right or wrong, and you have to go. But as you start to grow and you start to get clients and employees, they like job descriptions. They like, how do I onboard a new client process step by step, which for us creative people, it's like, just, stab you in the eye and just do it. Just bring, why can't you just have the client come on? Like I've said that before, and Mary's like, it doesn't work like that. And so for me, having that, now we have, and we've redone them a lot. And I think we always will be. I always just thought that we would just have this company and things would just work and it would be great. And it has been, but there's always something, good or bad, that we always have to adjust. And I think for us, the two pieces of advice I always give people is, one, sales, figure out how to do sales and figure out how are you going to consistently think about that every single day, because you could have the best core values and culture in the world and you don't have sales, doesn't matter. Then once you get those sales, what are you going to do? And those are the things that we, did a little bit here and there and didn't get followed, and did get followed. And so now I think we're in a really good spot as we, start to get those bigger clients. But what happens when certain things happen, when a client, is new, what do you do? And it sounds so awful and like business like, and most people who are entrepreneurs and startups, they don't want it. We don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. And creative people are the worst people to start a business. We are the worst. And so I think, that is important. And then also have someone that is the opposite of you. There's that visionary person who's crazy and whatever. And then that other person that's a little more, detail oriented. And that's something that really helped me early on.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, we've touched on quite a few different pieces of the puzzle, from the process standpoint, from the hiring standpoint, from the culture standpoint, and then also from the sales. If you were to look back and give very specifically kind of like nuggets of knowledge or things that you learned along the journey that you wish you would have known in the way beginning, we might have touched on it already. Something might also kind of come up as I'm asking this question, but what would you tell somebody that might be one or two steps before you, and to help them either shortcut time, money, investment in getting to where you are right now?
Yeah, I think, besides the sales piece, that's super important, but we really didn't do a great job of defining who we help solve problems for. Like our very specific ask of this is what we do and this is who we do it for. And really picking those avatars and that going after that singular focus rather than just saying we do everything for everyone. And so I think that, and then also, and we did a pretty good job with this, but I still, and I'm a creative brand person, but I really believe in the branding and the messaging. Like your brand is essential, and your brand is what I love to tell clients. Your brand is what other people say when you're not in the room. And I think that is super important. And focusing on who and what specific problem you solve would be something that I think we should have done early on. And I think that's a really good lesson for those. And then the other piece is be ready for that self-doubt. I think that's hurt us, I think, because of my imposter syndrome that I've had forever, and with all these great things that I've done, successful teaching career, thousands of students, started a business and it's still going today, great family. I mean, it's writing a really good script. I still at some times don't believe that it has anything to do with me, because anybody could do this, right? I mean, people do it all the time. And I think really getting to have that belief in yourself and understanding that you can do it and you are the one to do it, I think is something early on would have been great. And it's something that you always have to work on, I think, for myself. But yeah, before you really start going, I think focusing on what is and who is, the problem that you're solving.
Mm-hmm. Having a very specific message as opposed to, we do everything.
Yeah.
You just name it. What do you want? And they're like, I don't know what I want.
Yeah. I mean, we did that. We still sometimes do it today. Over the last year, we've been really specific about like, look, we do brand, web, and video, and we don't do PR, and we don't do this. Cause for me, I'm always like, oh yeah, absolutely. Cause in my mind, I've got really smart people here and they can figure it out.
And you had touched on that self-doubt part, which most likely has something to do with the book that you're writing. And I know the question that I normally ask when we're kind of pivoting from looking at the past and kind of starting to look at the future is usually based around what are you excited about. And I know that you have a book coming out. Do you want to talk a little bit about The Lonely CEO? Does it relate to the self-doubt kind of topic that you were talking about? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I'm a big book nerd, and I've always wanted to write a book, a fiction book, nonfiction book. And so, I was talking to some people and got interviewed a few people, and they're like, hey, it was one of those things where I was, interviewing editors just to see. And I started telling her my story, and she's like, you got a hell of a story. And for me, I'm like, I was a teacher and a business owner, it's like, and, but yeah, I think I wanted to write a book. The thing that used to frustrate me early on was I'd start to read these business books and it was all great stuff, but it was not reality for me. Like I was a family man. I had kids and I have kids and I'm not going to be able to work 2 hours and then go live in a Buddhist temple. I mean, it's just not reality. Like we've got little kids that need their diapers changed. I got dogs that are pooping on the floor. I mean, it's just not reality. Right. And I think most business owners were like that. And so I always felt that I wanted to write a book about, how hard it is to run a business and how sometimes you feel alone because, that's why it's called The Lonely CEO. Because as a business owner, you're really alone. Like you can't really tell your staff that you're worried about some things because they freak out. Like the littlest thing you say, I learned that lesson. You can't tell your friends because they're working in regular jobs. They don't get it. They think you're a bajillionaire. And you sometimes don't want to tell your colleagues because they think you're doing really well too. And sometimes you don't even want to tell your family because you don't want them to worry. And so I wanted to write something that talked about kind of my journey and how hard it's been, but also that there's things that we've done and things that you can do that can help. And they're all practical things. They're not some crazy, do this crazy funnel and you'll get, millions of dollars. It's practical advice for any business owner.
Yeah. And that's very needed to be able to give practical advice and making it to where people realize that being lonely is just part of the job and you got to kind of lean into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that where you came up with the title and, your experience kind of feeling lonely and, how did you come up with the title?
Yeah, the working title was How Not to Run a Business. I thought that's what I wanted to call it, because you see that on the shelf, I think people would be like, aha. And so we came up with something different, but yeah.
Yeah. So marketing was like, I don't know if that title is going to work exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Awesome, man. And for anybody that's kind of, trying to learn more about the book and maybe get on and kind of like your list, how do people get to know a little bit more about your book and kind of move forward?
Yep. So thelonelyceo.com. You can put your email in there for pre-order. We think it's at the last stage of final edits. And so we think, I'm hoping September 1st, but you can put your email in there and we'll let you know when it's out, and we'll have an Amazon page and all that set up. So yeah, it's good. And, if no one buys a single copy, I think, I'll be happy that I got it done. We'll use it as, proof that, maybe I know a little bit of something. But at least I'll have a box of books that I wrote, which is cool. And to me, it's like, to me, it sounds like no big deal, because you and I hang out with people that have written books, and we know people that have written books. So we're like, I might as well do it too. But in reality, most people don't do what we do, and not just writing books. I mean, what I try to tell my coaching clients is, like, in reality, most people don't run businesses. They just don't. And the ones that do, the percentages of people that make it are very slim. So the fact that you're still here, and halfway alive is something you should say, hey, good job to yourself every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You got to focus on the progress and the growth that you take on when you kind of lean into not being like everybody else, And just so you know, there's at least one person that's going to buy your book. This
Good.
guy.
Well, the cost went up. It's $7,200 a book. So thanks. That'll be great. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Because no one else is going to buy. Right.
Awesome, man. For anybody that is listening and they want to know a little bit more about you or get a hold of you, learn more about your agency, how would they get a hold of you? Or do you have like a website that you want to send them to? Or
yeah, you can go to our Michigan Creative site. It's just michigancreative.com, or my site that has all of our links to my coaching, to the book. All that is bryantown.io. And love talking to other business owners. We've got a great team here if you need branding, messaging, video, websites. But yeah, just trying to create that community of other like-minded folks for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Bryan, it was awesome having you on the show today, and I really appreciate your time, and I'm super excited for your book being launched. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, Jesse, this was great. It made my day. Definitely made my day. Maybe I'm going to do all right today.
Agency owners, if you want to transform your agency to sustain and grow without your direct involvement, where you can stop working in the business and start working on the business, where you can free up your time, delegate work more effectively, price and position your services to finally get paid for what you're worth, and have the team run the day-to-day, go to nicheincontrol.com/case study now to learn more about leverage for growth. And also to book a free strategy session with us. We'll look at your systems, determine exactly what you need to do in order for you to scale this year, and to create a strategic plan so that you can live the life of entrepreneurship you've always dreamed about. Go to nicheincontrol.com/case study now.